think about the sounds that we hear in nature and just in our everyday lives as sort of part of that song or that creative part of our days that we don't always tap into. So I'll just read a bit of it, but it's called I Have Heard. And it's in my book, Less Sweet Than Chocolate or Concrete. So I have heard Skytrain and Rebel cry, not angrily, but catalytic. Bees purposely landing on ragged, small-edged leaves, while a human power washes or power vacs a machine or home. I have heard smells entering my nose as I breathe deep and twigs are bent under me. The click-click of my joystick engaging as I consider moving or staying still. Mechanical and blending. Rolling over or caressing. Masking a way in. And I liked that experience because it gave me a chance to sort of see my wheelchair as like part of the landscape that I'm a part of, rather than being this thing that like separates me from nature or like separates me from my environment. So that's just a small section, but I'll maybe read a little bit later to tie it into what we're going to talk about next.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, it's nice having an audio book version too, because it's another way into the content. But yeah, I think like the skills that we develop in terms of sound editing are often adaptation based, as well as just like learning the skills of how to edit and record and stuff. So it's like, it's extra work not having access to that kind of stuff too, you know?
Paul's accessible home studio.
You ended up building your own sound studio.
Correct. Yeah, that
Can
really,
you tell us about that?
Yeah, that really pushed me to building my own studio, my home studio, because I was like, in the long run, I'm like, no, there's no way I'm gonna function this way. And what if I get inspiration right away, and I want to record it, I want to arrange it. Since there's no access to any studio, what am I gonna do? So it took me 10 years because I wanted to buy something that I wouldn't have to change every year. So it meant a lot of financial investment and a lot of saving up, buying high-end equipment. But also, my main goal was to make sure that like my space is it's user-friendly and accessible, that whoever has or would like to record something can be able to say, hey Paul, can I come and use your space for a little bit? And then they can that person can have full access to control and balance the sound the way that individual wants and make sure that everything is being done properly.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have that feeling. So I do have that feeling, and that my space is accessible, user-friendly. You have full control. You're in the space of a booth plus a recording space at the same time. So you have it all two in one.
We've had some good times recording some songs in there too.
Definitely, yeah, we've had some great times.
The
yeah.
Crips Everywhere song that is yet to be launched.
You're right.
Can't wait to hear that.
You know, I still have that file, and I want to really work on it even
We have
further.
to do that this summer, man. Yeah, because we want to make a music video and
Oh
everything.
my God.
And just
Yeah.
get everybody out in the streets. So when it's safe, we'll
do
definitely do that.
Mm-hmm.
The process of making accessible sound studios.
We create the space that we want, right? But also, it's nice to have access to, publicly funded ones too. Why not, right? So,
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
And we were thinking like, because in Montreal right now there's a lot of spaces that are in flux. They're in the middle, it seems like. Are we reopening? Are we gonna change the way that we operate? Are we being bought up? Like, it's really unclear where we're gonna head after the pandemic.
Right.
and so it's hard, but it's also, there's an opportunity there, right? And it's like, there's an opportunity to kind of reconsider how we work and who we want in our spaces. And so, yeah, I just want to offer that because I know it can be like kind of disappointing. Like I know with your process at Concordia, you were really excited to hopefully create something that would allow, you know, a decent amount of space. So somebody with a service dog and someone with a wheelchair working together, or two chair users in the same space and whatnot. And I know it didn't work out for you at this point, but I think because of where we are, I wanted to also ask you, like, what was that process like a bit, so that if there are people who ever, you know, taken this video and think, let's see how we can adapt our space, like just run through a bit of what it was like and sort of the twists and turns and stuff, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I definitely learned a lot from this experience, and kind of when I set out to provide a recording studio or booth, I didn't, I'll be upfront, I wasn't from the start thinking I'm going to provide an accessible studio, or I was, but I was like accessible for MA students and profs who don't currently have access to anything. Because in general there wasn't. The problem was access to a sound recording space for a lot of students.
Yeah, and I mean that's an important part of what it means too. So
yeah. Yeah, and it was kind of in the process of research and considering a lot of different options, which again, working in a university environment, and I guess any artistic space, you have limitations in terms of like which rooms you might be able to use or funding. And I landed on this one recording booth, which I thought was good. And it was when I went to visit it and I saw it myself that it really clicked. Like, this is not accessible and that's not acceptable. So that's when I went into really a deep dive in terms of asking people to contribute more funding, so that, you know, in my mind it was going to be, we'll enlarge the booth and we'll add a ramp. And that was like an option with the booth and everything. But as we kind of dig deeper into the booth itself, it's pretty interesting because it was some things that made the booth perform as a booth, made it inaccessible. So, for example, it was a bit raised from the ground to prevent from like reverberations from the ground from coming into the booth.
Right.
And then the door is extremely like heavy and needs to be locked into place to create like a seal for the sound. And all these things made it really hard to add a ramp to the door, for the door to close, to add an automatic door. And I finally brought you both in to look at it, and when all things considered, it was kind of like adding the ramp and the door, it seemed like and enlarging the booth, it seemed like it was only minimally meeting accessibility standards. So, you know, that story sounds a bit disappointing, but I think, yeah, something I learned or ended up feeling was that providing an accessible booth to like the students, the profs, was the responsibility of one research lab, but it was also something bigger, and needed kind of institutional buy-in and more stakeholder buy-in, and kind of the expertise of disabled sound makers from the start. But yeah, I think like one of my guiding principles was really like, if you build accessibility into your project from the get-go, if it's part of your vision, that is ideal than trying to accessibilize something later.
After. Yeah. I mean, that's such a hard lesson. Like, I've learned that a million times too, right? And probably you have too.
I've encountered that a lot, and I've tried to talk it through with some institutes and say, well, like, if you have a project, before you do anything, you should make sure that your team from the get-go, like you said, it involves people that are actually going to be using the space, because they know better what their needs are than to have somebody just have assumptions of something that won't even work at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, leading into this, like, I have a question, like, because it's really interesting the journey you've taken, Simone, in making an accessible studio and an accessible booth, in spite of all the hiccups that you have encountered along the way. My question would be, like, in terms of the booth right now that you have, how have you had the opportunity to use it and see how the sound like and the equipment, how it all works, doing like small project like podcasts?
Well, yeah, we're still in the process of setting up the booth, and it's, as you know, it's always complex. But I mean, in terms of accessibility, the booth still isn't accessible, sadly, because of, yeah, as I was saying, a mix of material and institutional and bureaucratic constraints. We ended up getting a smaller booth that has the potential to be expanded later and accessibilized later, and there's maybe lessons learned that I would maybe bring different people on board from the beginning, or really like try to be very imaginative in our solutions going forward.
Right. But it's also like, I find often with projects like this, it's like one person kind of driving it, and then it doesn't always work, because it's like, it takes, like you said, creative thinking and resources, and like there's funding available for example, accessibility costs in like Canada Council grants and like other arts agencies now. But it's something to do from the get-go, like you were saying, so that when the project or the infrastructure starts being developed, it's already in the plan, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, because I did see it was often your initiative, and so that's, yeah, it's just a lot for, like...
For one person.
And so, and, you know, like, there should be support for that, like, from the university, too, you know? So.
But I must say, too, that, like, based on where you are, like, what you've done as a one person, honestly, you've come a long way, and you've done the best, and I see like this great opportunity and great improvement in that, and it's gonna be so fun. Like, I'm just one time I was just imagining myself in that booth and like having full control. I'm like, this is gonna be awesome. This is gonna be lovely, especially when we came and saw the space and looking at the pictures of the booth. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about, you know.
Yeah,
but
sweet.
I really like. I'm looking forward to what the future holds in that space, and it's gonna be wonderful. Maybe next time when we meet, we will be saying a different story, you know.
Yeah.
And I do believe it's gonna be a different story, and it's gonna be a wonderful one where action will be taking place, and it will be like, oh, we came a long way and we've made it through. So I have hope that it's gonna come through.
Yeah, I think, you know, yeah, there were moments that I was feeling quite lonely in the process, and we talked about that too before, just around, yeah, it's kind of like being a bit in the middle too, and like when you start investigating how inaccessible something is, you're talking with disabled people and you're like, you can't get into this space and I'm sorry. And then on the other hand, you're asking for thousands of dollars to accessibilize something. So yeah, could be a strange position to be in.
Why we keep doing this work?
I'm curious, like, from your experience being in longer term projects, how you keep the momentum going as well, or what you've seen, what we can learn from.
I mean, something that Dorothy Ellen Palmer said when I had a chance to have a conversation with her. She's a writer. She's a senior, and she's also disabled. And she wrote this awesome book called Falling for Myself, which is just like, it's her memoir, but it's also her just claiming her own self-love and just who she is. But anyway, she's really just straight up about numbers, and she's like, look, disabled people are at least 20% of the population. So if we're talking about like representative art scenes, and you know, if everyone, like if there's 20% of the people involved are disabled, can like freely access the space, then representation is getting there. And then look at, you know, of course, other identities and realities and stuff, but that does drive me, actually. That motivates me, because it's like, just, it's numbers, and it's totally achievable. So that's something that keeps me going, you know. Yeah. And I think, like, I don't know, because I sometimes think about, I realize what I think through writing, right? And so something else that I wrote was around like the idea of belonging, but having like unspectacular belonging. So just being in a space and not having to call ahead, not having to research, like just showing up and doing the thing. And so that's something that also is like something that I like as well.
What does accessibility mean?
Yeah, like if someone, an art space or a sound studio person was thinking of hearing this and wanting to accessibilize their space, like if we had to start from the beginning, what would you say that accessibility means in the context of a sound recording space specifically?
Just like anyone who wants to can use it, and then the people who haven't been using the space start coming. So, because we sometimes hear like, oh, we don't get requests for ASL, or we don't get requests for an accessible stage, like a ramp to the stage, because, but it's like a chicken and an egg thing. It's like, if it's not an option, then we ain't gonna bother, you know what I mean? So it's like, but to me that, it's like, so anyone who may be interested to attend or be an artist in the space just does, and it's just normal and regular kind of thing. Yeah. How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I think accessibility should be something that like should be a normal thing, just like when people are building a building or designing a studio. It's never thought of as to, oh, we need to think about who are we using, making this studio for anybody. It's like, it's a natural instinct that, oh, okay, people are gonna come and use the studio. So I think accessibility should be in that space whereby, okay, I'm building a studio, and I have to think about, I have to make sure that accessibility is in there as a priority. Because when you're talking of accessibility, your main goal when you're building a studio is like, you want everybody to be able to come into your space. But if your goal is about everybody coming into a place, and then there's barriers, you're not completely accessible. Because if I cannot come in with my chair, or I can come into the building, but not the actual studio room or the booth, then it defeats the purpose of everybody has access to it.
Well, this is something interesting. Like Danielle Pierce, who is a friend and also an artist, said way back in the day to me, and they were like, people don't think about disabled people producing. So it's like, you might be able to get in, and like you said, for your band, like record in a hall, and then, but it's they don't imagine a person with a disability like behind the boards, you know. So
you're right about that, which brings me to the idea of that. It just reminded me of when I went and studied music, because it took me a while for them to really accept me into the program. I think the challenge was that, well, this program is for people who are able to play an instrument. What can he play? What can he do? Music requires physical mobility. Like you have to be, yeah. And how is it gonna be? What is it gonna be able to give?
Then
So
he went on directing like a 50-piece band.
that's it. So
come
I had to really go up front and say, okay, look, listen. This is what it is. Like, just take off your blindfolds and look beyond. And I said, based on this and this, based on my condition and based on the desire I am capable to do this, the only thing I need is to be given a chance to prove to you I can make it. And I said, if you don't give me this chance this year, don't count on me coming back next year. You know.
But I mean, that's rough, man. Like, you shouldn't have had to do
Yeah,
that.
so I had to do that, but it shouldn't happen. So my thing is, I don't think people are there to understand what really accessibility is. You know.
The nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, Paul, I think about it, and it's like, I learned what accessibility is with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like it's a group effort to learn these things, and
True.
I may have needed it before, but I didn't know what was out there. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. That's why it's like, knowledge sharing is a big part of what I'd like to do, because it's like, you don't know what you don't know, and it's like, I think it's time now for a lot of spaces in Montreal to kind of say that, and then also to try and learn, you know, and
Right.
so I'm excited that we're able to kind of join on board when we can, like,
Right.
to help
Yes.
people and organizations through that learning curve, because it is a big one, and like,
It's a big one.
and it's okay, like, it's not something to be like ashamed about. It's just like sort of accepting, like, okay, now it's time to figure things out, and like, we're constantly learning about it too. It's not
Right.
like it's like,
Right.
you know, so yeah, that excites me when we can kind of come on board, like we did with your project and other ones. It's like, it's a nice way to sort of be involved and offer that knowledge that we've learned sometimes the hard way, you know.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, and well, yeah, hearing your story, I'm like, oh, it's incredible you did that. I also feel very sad hearing you had to do that somehow, but it's like beautiful and sad.
You mean like advocating for?
Yeah, for the, or
Yeah.
just being like, you need to take me or I'll leave. And I feel like it's also like something I've seen around access stuff, is like people kind of being like, it's not like shutting down a lot
Yes.
with because of maybe guilt or embarrassment around not being able to
Right.
provide access. And yeah, I'll add that like working with Paul and Aimee and engaging with it as a process and an open conversation is like really fun and exciting, and yeah, there's a lot to learn, and it can be a learning process that everyone is involved with.
Yeah, it can. And the shutting down also happens on the other side too. I mean,
Yeah.
there have been times where I've been much more like disappointed in places and just not bothering, you know? I'm not there anymore, but it's hard sometimes that like you feel excluded by your own community, right? Like, I mean, as an artist.
Right.
So yeah, but it is nice, and especially doing it in friendship like this, it's really cool.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, it is cool.
Good reason to get together.
It's really nice.
Closing the space and keeping in touch.
So we're launching like a new container for some of the access work that we do, because for a while we've had a Facebook page. We don't always check it and stuff as
Right.
accessibilize, and so so we have a new initiative that's called Ubuntu Works, and
Yes.
it's a Zulu term that means like broadly community and stuff. And so I don't know, Paul, do you want to say anything about it, or?
No, yeah. Well, Not much, but I think you've covered you've introduced it better than I would, you know. And yeah, but that's where we can be reached, and depending on what your needs are and what your project entails, you will find a description of who to reach out to in that in what we are establishing. You can reach to us collectively or individually.
Yeah, it's like kind of a network, and then we'll have some videos and information that we want to share with people, and
All right.
just to stay in touch in a more easy way. So the website is Ubuntu Works. So UBUNTUWORKS.ca. And then the email address is info@ubuntuworks again. So
There you have it,
that's a
people.
way that we can stay in touch, and we want to find out about people's projects too. You know, like, I mean, just hearing about all the acts that are part of this festival, it's like amazing. There's like probably ways to collaborate. You know.
All right. Yeah, it's true.
But I've had a wonderful conversation with you guys.
Yeah,
Oh
me
yeah,
too.
I had a wonderful one too.
Yeah, and I highly recommend working with these two. And I think a lot of this can sound heavy and like, but yeah, as I was saying, it's actually Access is a very fun and multifaceted and creative process. And yes, it's about disability. It's also intersectional and involves a lot of other axes of exclusion and inclusion, and yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Do we have it? Well, I want to say some thank yous. Maybe
Please.
I'll-
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
and then
great.
yeah.
Please, yeah.
So really want to thank the Suoni Popolo Festival, which I think is a festival that thinks a lot about access in different ways, and for for producing this video. The Feminist Media Studio, which is, you can reach at feministmediastudio.ca. Access in the Making Lab, which is accessinthemaking.ca. And they've really also been huge supports in carrying this project forward and supporting this research and this collaboration, specifically Krista Lines, Arsely Dokumachi, Razan Al-Salah, and Piper Curtis. And we've launched like a whole project around sound making and access and disability and technology called Talking to Each Other, which you can find on our websites. And there'll be more content for the festival.
Nice. And of course, a huge thank you to the folks behind the camera.
Yeah. Thanks,
James
camera
and
crew.
Alex. They've been awesome.
Yes.
It's nice working with you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bonsoir et bienvenue. Mon nom est Ben Reimer et je suis directeur artistique du festival Undrum. Hi everyone, I'm Ben Reimer and I'm the artistic director of the Undrum Festival. And this is part 2. It has been a dream of mine to bring together a collective of diverse artists who are undoing our conception of the drum solo and expanding the meaning of what it is to be a drummer. Today, just like we did last week, Undrum Festival is going to be bringing another set of artists who are reaching beyond traditional roles in popular music by including elements of avant-garde composition, improvisation, electronics, field recordings, and various other elements. Pour cette deuxième partie de Undrum, on commence avec Greg Harrison. Ensuite, on voit Millie Hong, suivi par Ian Chang. On continue avec Jason Tate, Islam Benfrage avec Camille Renard et on finit la soirée avec Suzy Ibarra. Avant chaque pièce, il y aura une courte entrevue avec les artistes animée par Jess Tsang et Alex Haupt d'Architect. I want to thank my friends in Architect and Suoni for believing in this project and the Canada Council for the Arts et le Conseil des Arts et des Lettres du Québec for making it possible. To all you watching, merci beaucoup d'être ici. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy part 2 of Undrum Festival.
Hi, Greg.
All right.
Thanks for taking the time to chat with us, and welcome to Undrum.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
So let's start this right away. Is it safe to call this performance the triptych of Greg, maybe Greg in a nutshell?
Yeah, I mean that's way better than what I was calling it. So yeah.
So what were you calling it?
I didn't really know. You know, I was trying to figure out, like, these were kind of improvised pieces, so I didn't really have any titles for them, and so yeah, let's go with triptych. That's
Awesome.
great.
Awesome. And how about we take a quick look into the composition, or you call it you just mentioned it was an improv.
Mm-hmm.
So your rig is pretty complete. There's a lot going on, and are you using live electronics? Is that Max or it's different?
Yeah, so I mainly use Ableton with some Max for Live patches and quite a bit of outboard gear. I like to kind of mix it up a little bit and have some stuff kind of running out of the box. So it is kind of a hybrid of digital and analog stuff.
A single effect in your sound world can ripple for so long, at least to me. You know, we hear that brush skitter sound and the processing that happens through there, and then, you know, there are all these other kind of, I feel like you're taking these effects and really getting the most possible out of them. Do they, like, do these things inspire specific compositions, or you know, are the compositions first and then the effects? Do you have like an order there?
I think it kind of happens at the same time, and usually I'm not. Well, it really depends. I think if I'm really trying to achieve a certain sound, then I'll find a way to get there eventually. But with this performance, it was more like setting up some things and just kind of playing with it, and then the composition kind of happened, you know, as a result, sort of thing. Like the brush thing that you were mentioning was just sort of you know, that was kind of a happy accident when I was just kind of moving around to like press record and like and it was just whipped. I was like, oh, cool, okay. So that's part of the piece now. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's amazing. What does the future of drum set playing look like to you?
Just seeing the advancement in like electronic percussion technology is mind blowing. So I I perform with the sensory percussion triggers made by Sunhouse, and like I remember first hearing about them like on a Kickstarter thing, and like it absolutely blew my mind, like what that leap in what you can do with electronics and in a performative way, not just a compositional way, but
Right.
and it's only just going to keep going, you know. So it's yeah, and I feel like I'm sort of getting at the age now where I'm like I'm having a hard time keeping up. So it's things are moving kind of quick, but I do see that integration happening more and more, which is really exciting. And even just with acoustic instruments, having sort of like reverse engineering those in such a way that they sound electronic, so they're those both ends are kind of meeting somewhere in the middle, which is really fun.
Thanks so much for
Great.
this, and we're really looking forward to everyone seeing your video.
Awesome, thanks so much.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us, and welcome to Undrum Festival.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're about to see a performance of yours that has all these different video effects applied to it, and is, I believe, a continuous improvisation on drum set. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I recorded my solo first. I just like recently discovered this app that you could like put effects on the video, and I thought that's just like a way of like expressing myself like with the sound, but also you're like seeing my solo. So, not to distract the sound, but just add some fun and just some like, sometimes like just seeing and hearing are like different things. So then I wanted to kind of express like what I see inside my brain.
Would you mind telling us a bit about your performance as such? Is there a theme other than maybe a musical idea that you're exploring here?
Yeah, I for this solo I wanted to record at my place because I just felt like that like represents like the pandemic so well, that everyone's just being home and trying to figure out what to do and trying to figure out like to like work with things within like what you have. It doesn't have to be always loud. Drums tend to be like so easy to be like loudest instrument usually in like among other instruments, but I just wanted to explore more of the quieter side in a smaller room with more muted sound. And so yeah, I had some extra drum heads lying around, and I was like, maybe I could do this, I could use these for something. So I started putting those on each drums, and it gave me really nice like shorter notes, like muffled sounds. but also the rims gave me like certain pitches. So I find it like really fun to explore.
The tones to me are they're so brittle and kind of melodic and piercing that they almost seem like the equivalent of cymbals in a normal drum set. I mean, you obviously also have cymbals, but there are these kind of they're almost gamelan like to me. Hearing that kind of rim hit, and so I'm just wondering, is there one, are you thinking of them like that? Are you thinking of them like analogous to cymbals or in place of them or anything like that? And how did you achieve that particular sound?
I just played around with rims a bit before I recorded my solo, and trying to find the right way of playing it with that certain timbre. Um,
Mhm.
and of course, I've heard gamelan music a lot, and I've like I was actually thinking about that too because I went to a show,
Really?
yeah, a few years ago, and it was just like mesmerizing, just like 1,000 like gongs and like drums and like it's so melodic and beautiful. So I'm sure I am like inspired and affected by it, but at the time maybe I was not thinking, but then I heard the solo after and I'm like, oh, it totally sounds like it. So you got that
Yeah.
right.
Even when you're doing like kind of these skittery things on the drums, and then one little tiny rim hit, even though like I can imagine that hit is very minuscule, it kind of goes poof, and it cuts right through all the rest of the sound. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I know, because yeah, I mean it's very sharp for sure.
Mhm.
So then when it like suddenly appears after just like muffled drum sound, it sounds almost like very like a contrast sounding that's like, oh my god, it's like almost too loud. But then like, hey, I'm not really playing loud. I was just like, playing kind of drums with mallets or yeah, so it just sounded muffled, but like definitely it's like piercing, and then it has like like hey, I'm here, like I can't think of
Distinct. Oh
yeah,
yeah,
It's very
very
yeah,
present.
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
presence, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the title of this piece?
Yeah, I think I'm always anything in my life. I really like things circular. Um,
Oh, I like that.
oh, just like the roundness of it, and then you go from the one spot and you go back eventually, and it just feels like yeah, like it feels like like a mother nature. You were born from the nature and you die in nature. It's like I don't know how my brain works, but very vague things. I just like always have so much things going on and trying to not think about um like structures too much. I just yeah, circles, like pretty much that's kind of how I think about things, and I think that's maybe why I like drums too. Everything's in circles, and
Everything's a circle.
yeah, something about circles I am like really drawn to.
Thank you for those answers, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We're really looking forward to everyone seeing your performance.
Hey, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Millie.
Absolutely. Hi, Ian. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us, and welcome to Undrum.
Thank you, Jess. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be a part of the festival, and yeah, happy to be part of the interview as well.
For sure. Yeah. So where to start? I know that you do so many different things. You're a drummer, sound designer, composer, producer. I'm sure there's more that I don't have on this list, but I also know that you released a solo record very recently, and you've been performing with these Sunhouse sensory percussion instruments for quite some time. So for those who haven't seen this particular setup or these sensors before, can you talk a little bit about them and what they've allowed you to do that isn't possible on maybe like a regular drum set?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm gonna rewind a bit to like 2000. It's been 2014 or 15 or something when I was asked to help beta test this technology, Sunhouse sensory percussion, and essentially what it is, it's a machine learning software, as well as it comes with these sensors that you clip onto your drums. And the machine learning aspect of it is that you can kind of teach it the software. You can teach the software to understand different timbral, like to be able to differentiate when you're hitting, say, the center of the drum versus the edge of the head versus like the rim with the tip of your stick versus like the shoulder of your stick. You know, it can read all these differences, and you can teach it. So essentially, it'll like kind of pick up on these differences, and you can map up to 10 different zones for each drum. And so that's like 10 different kinds of hits. And so basically it makes any drum like a pretty powerful sampler. But the real power in it isn't, in my opinion, isn't the fact that you can like, because I hardly ever use all 10 zones because it gets kind of like difficult. But the real power in it, in my opinion, is that in learning it, it will be able to tell and track movement. So let's say I'm like moving from the easiest example is moving from the center to the edge of the head. As I move from the center to the edge, it's not just like, oh, we're in like center line A, and then you hit the edge and then it's like B. It will track sort of the gradients between that. And with that, you can map that to any parameter in whatever DAW or anything that you're using. And that's where it kind of blew my mind. And I was like, okay, there's nothing like this. And what it essentially has allowed me to do is that it's allowed me to kind of take the drums and then expand it to a sample-based environment that is very nuanced and responsive to my playing, as well as very there's just no limit to like how you can imagine the expressiveness of the drums kind of augmented into, you know, alternate sound worlds and realities. And the neat thing about this too is that it can track those timbral shifts even with like a mesh head practice type head, like a silent kind of head. So that's what I've done in the setup for my performance. It's all mesh heads. And for me, the decision to do that was really just trying to divorce myself from the sound of the drum set completely and explore what would happen if I was operating completely in like a sample-based world. And just so I'm not like negotiating, okay, the snare has to double the snare sound, and you know what I mean? So it kind of opened up the possibilities to make like full-fledged compositions. Not that you couldn't do it with an acoustic kit too, but just be different. I just kind of wanted to push that and see where it would take me. And in addition to that, I do have an SPDS in my setup for this performance, as well as like a simple MIDI controller where I'm like doing some simple things on that as well. So yeah.
For sure. Wow. Super cool.
What are you looking or listening for in a good sample? And what are some of the samples we're hearing in this set?
A lot of the samples I draw from, so I like tapping friends for sampleable material. You know, I think in general, I've found the most fertile ground when I feel like I have some sort of personal relationship to the sound, and that's obviously like more of a psychological thing than anything, but I find that if I get like a musician who has a deep relationship with whatever their instrument is and likes to think about their instrument in different ways, you know, extended techniques, all of that, like that's the stuff that like gets really exciting. Just like having them improvise in the room. What I always tell people is like, you know, what's like the thing that like you love about your instrument? There's a song called Food Court on there that heavily features samples by my friend Jackson Hill, who plays bass, and he sent me a bunch of like just like really gnarly harmonic-y, scratchy kind of like arco upright bass stuff, and like the entire song was like built off of those sounds. I put them into a sampler and like created like a progression with it, and so that's one example. Like I think things that feel very human or very performed are very like kind of interesting to me. I love kind of taking things that are acoustically generated and then processing them in a way that's rather than making it sound electronic, like I like to make them sound like more human. So like if like there's like breath or like some sort of like bow friction or whatever, like I like to bring that out to a degree that's like strange, but like feels supernatural in a way, because like anyone who's familiar with Ableton knows that like audio is water and you can turn like a bird chirp into a kick drum, but I'm not really interested in that. Like I'm interested in like making the bird chirp sound like a crazy bird chirp. I don't know.
Right.
For sure, for sure. Thanks for taking the time to speak with
Absolutely,
us. We're really looking forward to showing your performance.
I'm excited for it and excited to be a part of this. It's a really cool bill. The lineup is awesome, so it's an honor to be included. Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks, Ian.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Peace. Hi there, my name's Ian Chang, and it's a real pleasure to be here performing for you from my own home studio in Dallas, Texas. Thank you so much to Undrum Festival for having me as part of their incredible program. It's just so many innovative and amazing and inspiring percussionists and artists on there, so it's a real honor, for real. But yeah, thank you for being here, for listening, and for watching, and I hope you enjoy the music. Thank you.
That was a mistake. Gonna start over. Thank you. Ooh, thank you for joining me on that journey. Once again, my name is Ian Chang. Extremely grateful to be here as a part of Undrum Festival. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival. See ya.
Hi, Ian. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us, and welcome to Undrum.
Thank you, Jess. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be a part of the festival, and yeah, happy to be part of the interview as well.
For sure. Yeah. So where to start? I know that you do so many different things. You're a drummer, sound designer, composer, producer. I'm sure there's more that I don't have on this list, but I also know that you released a solo record very recently, and you've been performing with these Sunhouse sensory percussion instruments for quite some time. So for those who haven't seen this particular... Hi, Jason. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us, and welcome to Undrum Festival.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're about to see a performance of yours called Drum Solos. And you also have an album of the same title that was released a couple years ago. And basically, this process is something that you've been developing for a while, I would assume. Is this what you consider your primary practice now? Do you gravitate more toward this kind of work or toward drumming? And can you walk us through what putting together one of these performances looks like for you?
Yeah, the whole drum solo thing came about. I basically had friends nagging me to make a solo record for decades. And we're just kind of having drinks one Christmas, and my friend says, "When are you going to make your record?" Like, what am I going to do? Make a drum solo record? And we all laughed. And I thought, why don't I do that? Why don't I? How about a drum feedback record? And my friend said, "That's a great idea. I'll help you release a record if you do it." So it was a concept that I came up with that I immediately thought, once I start working on it, I'm just going to drop it because it's not going to work. So I just had to figure out the mechanics of how to do it, and then look at the tones that I can get out of it. And it was a long process just figuring out how to scope it all out. But I intentionally wanted to approach the drums as a non-drummer and not use any of the skills that I've developed in 30 years as a touring and recording drummer, and look at it a new way. And by that point, I was already so burnt out on drums anyways. I needed to look at it in a different way.
I'm wondering, does the tuning of the drums affect that feedback? And so I guess that sometimes if the tuning is not set on the drum, then the specific kind of feedback you're looking for, you won't get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tuning is a huge part of it. And I have a high threshold ear. My ear has a high threshold for out of tune, and it doesn't bother me if things are in specific pitches. I mean, you could really spend your week tuning the drums so they feed back at a certain pitch, but that's not what I want to do. But yeah, I found like the thinner the heads, and obviously no muffling inside of them, and higher pitches sometimes would yield a lower feedback. And there's so many variables, like the microphone, the amplifier. It's like sort of, yeah, it's like 3 or 4 things working into play the room.
So speaking of, you just mentioned microphones and the setup and everything. Would you mind walking us through the signal chain?
Sure. So the microphone plugged into the amplifier, the microphone, a drum in front of the amplifier, then the microphone will go in front of the drum. So hopefully the energy from the microphone feeding back from the amplifier will resonate the drum heads, and that'll be like the fundamental tone. Like the very first time I played a bar when I was like 17 years old, I asked for a kick drum in my monitor, and the guy put it way too much, and it immediately went boo, and everybody scrambles to turn it down. Like, hey, what was that? That was pretty cool. So I'm just kind of redoing that concept.
Wow. I'm wondering if there's anything that you feel that this process lets you express that you wouldn't be able to with your hands and feet. Obviously, you like you said, you're a very accomplished drummer. You've toured and performed for 30 years. Like, what is interesting to you about these sounds? And often, I think sometimes you can hear them as something that a person could play, and then at other times, there are these groans and wails and like multiple feedback stacks that you would never be able to achieve as one person with 2 arms and 2 legs.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoy the process of doing this. I mean, after a while it becomes tedious on my ears because of the volume, but it's like I find that my brain works in a different way when I'm doing feedback and drones as opposed to when I'm playing drums, because if I'm playing drums, I try not to think about what's happening, and I kind of shut off, and then little bits of information come in, and then you react to it. But you're not. It's not like playing hockey where you're in the sport looking at everybody all the time. You have to get lost a little bit. But the drum feedback, you can kind of sit back, because once you get it going, you could sit back and consider things for a little bit and then tweak them. I think it's less stressful for me than going and playing drums in front of a bunch of people.
Cool. Well, that's all the questions we have. Thank you so much for speaking with us, and we're really looking forward to showing your work at the festival.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Islam and Camille. Welcome to Undrum. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for having us in
For
this
sure.
beautiful project.
I guess right off the bat, how long have the two of you been working together?
I guess we began to speak about that project during the first confinement.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had like conceptualized the like we had like some creative discussion about how to bring all these negative emotion we had from the COVID and to create something that is universal as an emotional experience kind of thing. So.
And also, I want to say we were very lucky to have access to a studio. I think in June, I just want to mention Studio D325 that has been an amazing community for us and that opened the studio for artists that didn't have work, right? Because all the festivals were canceled. So we went to the studio and I think we tried the idea. We improvised and friends of us that are musicians came and so Islam were doing some projections. And so that really came from that moment where we didn't travel because it was often a moment where we were traveling or working a lot. And suddenly, because of that, we have access to the studio and we are working.
So was this your very first collaboration as such?
Yes, actually, yes.
Wow.
We've been conceptualizing all in like paper and like just ideas like with words, but the project on itself is like
wow, that's brilliant. Like to me, it looked like you've been doing this for the past 10 years or something. That's absolutely amazing. That's like kindred spirits. You know?
Well, I think, I don't know, I mean, we've been so honest with our work, I guess. That's what makes it super like, I don't know, it talks about emotions and like super deep things. So like having these, like, I don't know, it brings some honesty and some like creative things. And
I was thinking of that this morning. I met Islam because he came and he see a performance that I did. And I think we have something in common is about we like to disappear. We don't want to be so visible. I mean, we are not so interested of having the artist or the body of the artist in the center, but more how to use the body and the music and the rhythm in order for something to maybe appear that is not about us as artists, but about something else, which is vibration, which is emotion, which is this maybe a landscape, a territory for imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Tantôt dans la vidéo, on va voir à la fin de la performance, il y a un titre. Vous nous proposez une idée. Moi, j'ai maintenant compris c'est quoi ça veut dire. J'ai fait une petite recherche, j'ai trouvé qu'est-ce que le mot veut dire, mais est-ce que vous voudriez nous expliquer, nous dire qu'est-ce que ça veut, comment ça se prononce, et aussi qu'est-ce que ça veut dire le titre qui est quand même relié, mais pas dans la même direction que de voir peut-être gérer une perte ou être vulnérable devant une grief of loss. C'est relié, mais c'est pas si proche que ça finalement, je pense.
Je vais te laisser pour prononcer, ça va être...
Oui. Comment on prononce le mot? C'est Hanin.
Hanin.
Et c'est un mot en arabe qui veut dire essentiellement nostalgie. Mais c'est très intéressant parce que le mot Hanin se rapproche beaucoup de la racine qui est ha, ne, qui parle en arabe, ça serait la douceur. Fait que ces deux mots-là, c'est deux calques différentes presque d'une même racine. La racine est la même, puis ça donne la nostalgie et la douceur. Et ça, c'est très intéressant parce que, dans le fond, la nostalgie en tant que telle, c'est un moment qui est très, très précieux, qu'on ne sait pas forcément comment s'y prendre avec ça, mais que c'est beau de le prendre et de le vivre, de vivre toutes les émotions liées à la nostalgie, qu'il soit de la haute nostalgie, comme de la dépression ou de la colère ou des moments plus intenses versus des moments où tu es comme dans ce brouillard ou dans le bargaining, genre de... C'est ça. Et donc, je pense que avec ces deux concepts-là qui se calquent une au-dessus de l'autre, je trouve que ça fit parfaitement avec ce qu'on veut créer.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you both, and so nice to talk to you. And I'm really looking forward to everyone seeing your performance. It's fantastic, and please make more work.
We do. Thank you, Jax. Thank you, Alex.
Merci beaucoup. Au plaisir. Bye bye.
Merci beaucoup. À très bientôt.
Hi, Susie. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us, and welcome to Undrum Festival.
Hi, Jess. Hi, Alex. Thank you for
Hi.
having me.
Absolutely. So you made just a fantastic video that folks are about to see with, just an incredible array of instruments that I guess normally augment your drum set, right? And so, the very first shot that we see is like this overhead with all these beautiful, medals and gongs and all sorts of different things. Could you talk a little bit about these instruments and how you choose them and I guess what in particular they function as in your entire setup?
Sure. Well, this piece, Ritual, which also means ritual, I chose a whole Palabunibinian set of South Philippine gong ensemble, Maguindanao and gong ensemble instruments. I think I'm also playing northern bamboo, Kalinga bamboo. I'm also playing bamboo and bamboo jazz harp and bamboo buzzers in this. And they're percussion instruments that really resonate with me. And so I thought in this array of percussion, with these pieces, I really wanted to have these all around to be able to voice these different motifs, these different musical ideas. And so it's almost like a circle, right? Yeah. So the instruments you're seeing, you see my drum set, and then I'm also playing bass agong gongs, which are the low end, and then I'm playing these 4-pan gongs called gandingan, which are known as talking gongs in Maguindanao and South Mindanao culture because they've used these gongs to also communicate. What else am I playing? I'm playing bamboo buzzer, and bamboo jazz harp, which are often played up in the mountains in the north, in the Philippines, and in the forests. So I'm playing metal. You say metal, wood, skin, bamboo, right? What else am I playing in there? I was playing what's called akayo, or it's wood, the wooden xylophone, which is like kulintang gongs, but it's the wooden version, and it's very light wood. Like they look big, but each of the keys, if you pick them up, they're very, very light. It's like a paper wood.
Wow.
And I love that particular wood because it sounds like water. I think that covers most of it.
I think that's about it.
So I would like to follow up with the idea that you mentioned earlier about you said about the motifs. You mentioned motifs. So in your piece, Ritual is a collection of pieces for percussion drawing from your heritage. Can you give us a quick overview of the traditional motifs you use as well as how you develop them? What does ritual mean and what defines a ritual to you?
What is a ritual for me? I think many things can be rituals in the daily ritual. I love rituals. I love things that become rituals. I think it's something, the act of a ritual, which is not just a repetition, right? And has been used in so many traditional aspects, but also can be used also in our everyday modern culture. I think can be very personal. It also can be something about community. It can be everything in between. But I personally love the rituals. Both, I think, both things that connect us in community and also things that are very personal, can be very quiet, something that you experience every day, and to kind of hold on to those things and see how those gift us in our practices.
Wow, beautiful.
So music, really, for me, I love the acts of rituals in music and in music practice, in performance, in the communication of it, and how it's taught. So actually, in this whole suite of ritual, I have these pieces, and they are a call and response. So I play a certain idea and motif on some of my smaller hand percussion, and then I'll respond on the drum set to that. And so if you hear it, you'll hear these certain rhythms I might be playing with the jazz harp, and then and the bamboo buzzer, and then I'll come in and I'll respond on kit how I might voice that. So it is a kind of conversation going on between each of these instruments, and that, Alex, is how these motifs are moving back and forth.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, to be here with us, and to be a part of Undrum. We're so excited for everyone to see Ritwalls.
Oh, thank you. you.